Hey there, friends. It's Bill MacDonald, the Writing Doctor. Welcome to CREST Online Training, Lesson 13 of Part 1, where we're getting into practicing the skills of punctuation and sentence boundaries when it comes to run-ons and fragments once you feel like your students have mastered. Now, what I want to do, instead of taking you to a full-length passage of punctuation, I want to show you how important it is to focus just on the question and the sentence in the passage that the question is asking about for editing purposes. Remember that all of you from 3rd through 10th grade are going to get 2 editing passages and 2 revising. In December, the 9th and 10th grade students are going to get their last 2 editing and revising passages in the format where they have to write an expository and persuasive essay as well. They have 9 points. So I want to make sure I'm going to cover, because we have people, teachers in multi-grade levels, what I'm going to do to kind of try to help all of you at the same time is I'm going to do 2 problems from that were derived from a 4th grade test, 2 from a 7th, 2 from a 9th, and 2 from a 10th. That way, because that was the only official year where editing and revising was included as part of the test. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But let's start by just doing a quick review. I'll share my screen, the document camera. So far, we've gone over the S of superhero penmanship and keyboarding skills with Superman, Iron Man, Aquaman, and all of the S and P things that need to happen. Then we went to words, vocabulary, and spelling / transitions. After that, we went to phrases with capitalization. And I really feel like spelling, vocabulary, and transitions need to be an ongoing thing that you do every week. If you can somehow build it into your daily schedule, even in secondary, at least have new spelling words or vocabulary / transition words on a weekly basis that you're going to try and incorporate and have your kids sprinkle into whatever they're doing in terms of writing if you're not going to have an official spelling test. So now that we're going to be wrapping up editing, before we get into usage, where we'll use Spider-Man to check the subject verb agreement, I want to make sure that we understand punctuation and being able to apply the correct skills to sentence boundary problems that have run-ons where we don't stop for punctuation, or fragments where we get readers whiplash. So that all of you have that class set of those folders. I've already laminated these so that they can be used over and over again. And remember that on the upper right hand corner of your English language arts reading and writing folder, you do see the editing passages and essays. So before we start working on essays, which is part 5 of the training, we're going to make sure we understand how to do editing of passages, and part 2 afterwards we'll start on revising of passages, how to improve the content in terms of organization development. But today we'll be working specifically on the P of cups and the last S of cups, sentence boundaries to check for run-ons and fragments, continue on comma conjunction, repetition, content, meaning, cause and effect, and or compare contrast errors. So when you're looking for the process of elimination, a lot of those things on the bottom line are the reasons why you would get rid of them. So I want to refer you to the binder for this activity, where instead of looking at full length passages, I looked at the most difficult questions from 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th, the last uh, official year that they had the star writing with editing and revising. And so I chose for you for elementary questions number 2 and 3. For 7th grade middle school, we're going to do number 7 and 9 from page 543 to page 552 of the binder. So if you want to follow along, you can pause for a moment and go to that page so you can kind of do some of the activities as we're doing them. Number 14 and 15 for 9th grade, and 18 and 20 for 10th grade. Now, just a review, if the question says what change, it means almost 90% of the time, 99% of the time in most cases. I think I've only seen it happen once in all of the years of STAR where it didn't follow the rule that I have there. So if it's rule number 1 and it says what change, have your kids underline change and label cups where the mistake is capitalization, usage, punctuation, or spelling. We'll be specifically practicing spelling mistakes. Whenever it says, and I'm gonna do one of those for each the grade level. So number 2, 7, 18, 14, and 18 are going to be what change, and number 3, 9, 15, and 20 will be either rule number 2, what is the correct way to write sentence singular, where we'll underline correct or best and write ROF, where it's a run-on or a fragment or possibly no mistake, or it's the third way that you see sentence boundary issues. What is the correct best way to write sentences, blank and blank, where the first one is a sentence, a complete thought, and the second one is a fragment, or the opposite can take place. So we'll look at, if you want to write those down in your notes, number 2 and 3 for elementary, 7 and 9 for middle school level, and 14, 15, 18, and 20 for the high school level. Their test is sooner for all the retesters, and I wanted to make sure that we gave them their chance to be able to practice as well, because some of you are in this training to kind of help your high school students with the retest. So again, what we'll be doing is focusing on just 2 letters of cups with 2 S's, the P for the punctuation, where we have red to stop and yellow to slow down, and testing that in the context of sentence boundaries. So if we go to the binder that I was telling you about, I'm going to start on page 543. As you can see there, that page 543 in your binder is the same page that's on your stoplight, the WWE stoplight, how to get 1, 2, 3, up to 5 points, depending on what kind of question that you're being asked. And then when you're writing the short answer and the extended essay response, how to make sure that you put the correct punctuation. So that guide is on the back of the WWE, and it's also right there on page 543, that the imaginary ball that we're holding in our free hand while we're holding the mouse in the other, we will imaginarily bounce the ball on the floor for a period, an exclamation, or a question mark. We'll toss it up in the air whenever we see, let me double check, an apostrophe, contraction, and opening, and closing quotation marks between dialogue. And finally, we will bounce it on the table for elementary commas, and middle school and high school semicolons, and colons. There's, if you look at page 544, it explains it in a little bit more detail in case you need that guidance there, what you would underline and what you would label. So as you can see, it's not going to be the entire passages, because in editing, especially editing, you're only going to be able to needing to be looking at like 3 to 5 sentences in an entire passage. So we said we would do, I'll let you do the easier ones, but I felt like I wanted to do the harder ones with you. So we'll do number 2 and 3 for the elementary level punctuation related. So let's get our annotation there. Number 2 and 3. So we have our checklist rules. And when you're taking your online test, there's a note section. So you can either do this on the notes portion of your online, or you can do it on regular paper, and your kids can actually be, monitored throughout the year to see if they're doing that, and you can make them turn in their strategies and take away some of the points, because if they're not underlining and labeling, then they should lose some points. So what we'll do is we'll say, let's read, underline, and label the question, and then we'll read, underline, and label that sentence that the question is asking about. So as you read, you're going to see, oh, what change? As soon as your students see change, they'll go look for the change that's going to be made. It's going to be sentence 2. So it's going to be question 2, sentence 2 in this case. So right away they can write on next to the problem, or wherever they're doing their strategies, the word cups. Underline change, label cups. So there's going to be capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling choices. But because we're trying to work on punctuation, the skill that you would probably want to be teaching your students, if they haven't been taught the skills, probably it would be a good idea to spend an entire 6 weeks focusing on punctuation. My recommendation is first grade for its first 6 weeks for capitalization, and at least the second 6 weeks for punctuation, the third 6 weeks for usage, and then you can get into the essay portion, trying to get better at that. Even though you might start early on some of the essay portions because your district is requiring it, don't expect quality on the editing if you haven't taught the skills yet. So as we read, we will do our strategies that we've been discussing. What we'll do is we'll make sure that we circle commas and apostrophes, contractions, and opening and closing quotation marks yellow, and our stop signs, our periods, exclamations, question marks red. Capital, beautiful palm trees, majestic sunsets, comma, and its close proximity to the Mexican border are 3 wonderful reasons, plural, to visit the Rio Grande Valley, period. Letter F says, insert a comma after palm. So if we were to try that, in yellow there. whoops, that wasn't what they said. Undo that. They said after palm. And something you could also do is possibly write, you can say, um, this is for letter A. They're asking me to place a comma after palm. Capital, beautiful palm, comma, trees. Since the palm trees go together, I don't think that that would make sense. So I doubt that I would want to pick that one. Let's try G. Capital, insert a comma after trees. All right, let's try that. Yellow slowing down. You want to make the little circle around it to remind yourself you bounce that imaginary ball on the table. Capital, beautiful palm trees, comma, majestic sunsets, comma, and its close proximity to the Mexican border. So 3 things in a list. So yes, you would have 2 commas. So that one does make sense. So we're probably going to go ahead and think that that is the one and that we don't want to do that one here. So let's take a look and see why we don't want its to its. Letter H. Beautiful palm trees, comma, majestic sunsets, comma, and it is close proximity. Since that doesn't sound right that way, I would cross off the one that sounds wrong. And since the second one is the change to, we want to eliminate that one. Change trees, plural, to trees, plural, possessive. That means something belongs to the trees. Whatever the next word is, there's a contraction there. So let's see. Since there would be a comma there, I can't own a comma. So that wouldn't make sense to choose that answer. So we would eliminate that one. So since we've eliminated 3, we will place, I'm going to get rid of F, H, and J. I'm going to select letter G, and I'm going to make sure I submit that in the book. And so, yes, we're going to be clicking on a submit button. So basically, it's going to fill in that letter. Oh, better put that in black because that looks kind of weird. We would darken in wherever letter G happens to be, and we're done. So that's how I would recommend you do it with 4th grade. Let's try one of the more difficult ones for 4th grade. And you'll see that every time the question asks about what is the correct way or what is the best way, this is rule number 2, because you see, let's do our checklist. Read it, underline, label, eliminate 3, and select one that will submit. Okay, so as we read it, remember that we're going to read, underline, and label in both the question and back in the passage, which we've brought over here for this case to save some time. So the question says, what is the correct way? Underline correct. Make it a bracket around sentence 3. Since it only says sentence singular, that's the one that stands for ROF. So the kind of mistake that we might have. And it's always nice to put a little bracket, just it's either a run-on or a fragment. So let's take a look at it. And if we just do this verbally, we might not notice. Sorry, if we just do this visually, we might not notice some mistakes, because if you listen to the sentence as I read it without any punctuation, you might not notice that there's a pause. Capital, the fender on that highway is dragging on the ground. It's making a lot of noise going down the highway, period. So we're thinking that there's a run-on problem. So let's start doing our process of elimination. The capital A, the fender on that car is dragging, period. Capital, on the ground, comma. So if we're doing color coding, then we would want to go ahead and circle our periods. This could be done easily if you're on paper. This test, you can print these out and do these on paper. Or I will be turning, as I mentioned, all of the multiple choice editing, revising, and reading passages into online format so that you have that option if you like. So let's see if we can switch to yellow now so that we can practice that. And I won't do that for all of them, but just to kind of give you the idea. And then we need back to red, because on the ground it is making a lot of noise, period, capital, going down the highway. Since we don't know what is going down the highway in that thought, that one sentence alone makes us eliminate letter A. Capital, the fender on that car is dragging on the ground, period. Capital, it is making a lot of noise going down the highway, period. So what's the difference? Right here in the sentence that's supposedly from the passage, they keep going even though there's a run-on there. So this one says, let's put a period where we naturally pause. And we think that's going to be the right one, but let's check the other ones. Capital, that fender on the car is dragging on the ground. My brain made me pause. So I have to remember that if my brain is telling me that I'm probably pausing, I don't want to turn a run-on into another run-on. So we would eliminate this answer. And we already have decided that letter B sounds great. So that's the one that we would pick. So for those of you who teach for elementary, those are grade level appropriate ones for you. I will go ahead and stop. I'll label. I'm going to send these to all of you, since I don't really know which grade levels you teach. We'll go ahead and send, so the videos don't get too long. I'm trying to work on that for you. We want to eliminate the three answers that we decided are wrong. It's going to be letters A, C, and D, where you see the X's, and we'll select like we did on the right hand side, and then we will push the submit button, and we will see that what will happen is the computer will allow us to select an answer. that has a little circle. I'm going to fill in either the B that's inside the circle. I was noticing on some of the questions they have when there's multiple answers, they're leaving the letters off, and when there's regular 4 answers, then they're putting the letters there, and you have to choose between A, B, C, D. So since I've submitted my answer, then I could go ahead and put my second S, and this could be, you could be having this in the note section, as I mentioned, or you could be in your notebook, in your strategies folder, just writing whatever acronym you use. And I just honestly do not like cubes because it starts with circle. We have to make sure we read softly or loudly so that we can verbalize all the punctuation marks and avoid that overlooking thing that sometimes happens. So on the next video, I'll do these consecutively. You'll get 4 videos, and I'll put them in one email. One will say for elementary, from like 3rd and 4th grade. Then we'll do the second one. We'll have 5th, 6th for 5th, 6th, and 7th. And the third one will be for 8th and 9th, and then the last one will be for 10th grade. So that concludes this video. So go to the next email. If you teach, it's not going to hurt you to practice. Somebody asked me, should I only practice the grade level that I teach? No. If the students did as poorly as you saw on the correct or best type sentences with run-ons and fragments, it's probably good to have all your students practice those. In fact, I have one passage in the binder that's nothing but run-ons and fragments, so that's going to be a great help to all of you guys. So tune in to the next video that will be the 2 7th grade problems in punctuation.